Tonight, 12 candidates are vying for the Democratic nomination. They're taking the stage in Ohio. It's the fourth Democratic presidential primary in this 2020 election season, also the biggest. Previous debates were capped at 10 candidates. That was spread over 2 nights. This debate, we're getting 12 candidates all on one stage. It's also going to be the first debate since Senator Bernie Sanders had a heart attack, the first since President Trump's impeachment inquiry began. So much to talk about. Let's do it with an expert. Stephen Maynard Caliendo is the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at North Central College. He's also a professor of political science and the co-director of the Project on Race in Political Communication. Lots of great titles, Dean. Thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here with you.
So let's start with Joe Biden. His son Hunter gave an interview today on ABC, questionable whether he should have, but it looks like former Vice President will spend part of his time tonight having to talk about something where some would argue there's no there. What would you advise him to do when the topic of Hunter Biden's work comes up?
Yeah, I think I'm interested in his response a little bit. I'm sure he'll have something very carefully crafted. And there is no there in terms of the conspiracy theories that the Trump administration and the campaign has been pushing. But I do think that reasonable people can argue whether or not Hunter Biden might have recused himself from serving on foreign boards while his father was vice president of the United States. What I'm more interested in than what Joe Biden says is what some of the challengers to him say about it.
On that issue.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the moderators ask them. I think it would be a fair question to ask, giving them an opportunity to maybe take a jab at one of the front runners, but more than that, to figure out to what extent there is some unity in the Democratic Party, because there's a lot to shake out.
You understand this political communication. I mean, if you were advising these candidates, isn't that a dumb thing to do? That is to say, if Joe Biden starts denying nothing happened, it was found that way, as opposed to, would you advise him to go on the attack, talk about Ivanka Trump, talk about the Trump kids? The President Trump is masterful at shifting the focus.
Yeah, and I think that's where the conversation can go, which is this is really interesting that the attack is coming from somebody whose children have been so well placed as a result of their father's business endeavors. And so, whether or not they're, and furthermore, emoluments questions, which are not at the center of the impeachment inquiry, but are around the periphery, and questions about whether the president or the president's family is benefiting directly from his role in the White House.
The other sort of new news tonight, as I said going into this, is that Senator Bernie Sanders suffered a heart attack. He seems to be back on his feet, says he's going to resume everything. But you can't put that behind you, can you?
There's no way. And I think that there's always questions about candidates who are older. We have been in an era recently where presidents have been younger. President Trump with a dramatic exception, of course. But thinking about President Clinton, President George W. Bush, and then Barack Obama, right? And so those questions were there anyway. Now it's a heart attack. Now there are questions about health. I'm interested less in what he says than how he looks. It's 3 hours. I have a standing desk at work. I stand for 3 hours, but not still. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a very different. Right. I mean, I'm a generation and a half younger than him. He has a tendency in some ways to lean anyway, right? So that may benefit him. In other words, he's kind of a holds on to the side.
But tonight we'll be watching.
Right, we will. And I think that, but what he can say is there wasn't a contrast between the way I behaved tonight compared to my previous. But if he looks uncomfortable and shifting weight more frequently than usual, I mean, the spotlight's going to be on that. I can't imagine how he's going to feel after, for 3 hours standing after he's just had major surgery.
So Elizabeth Warren, who is the other equally progressive, Sanders kind of candidate in this race, listen, and they're friends. Sanders and Warren are friends. Yeah. But that being said, I'm sure on some unspoken level, Senator Warren is just going, look, his support is going to come to me when people realize they just can't support him. How, if at all, should she address it tonight?
I think that she would address it the way that he would hope to address it, which is to say if Senator Sanders says he's healthy enough to be here, then he's healthy enough to be here. We're not going to question that.
And let's move on.
And let's move on.
The other candidates who have been on the stage before, we always talk about breakout moments. Kamala Harris had one in the first debate. And now we've got Pete Buttigieg. Do you think the Cory Bookers, all these other folks who have been there before, are they sitting there saying, I need another breakout moment, I've got to do something? And if so, is it by attacking somebody who's around them on the stage, or is it's about President Trump?
It could be either way. I mean, what's interesting is that they're arranged by their polling, right? They're arranged so the center of the stage are the front runners, and then they're sort of arranged out from there.
Although arguably Elizabeth Warren might be in that center position instead of
Vice President Biden. I just mean that the three of them are sort of in the middle, and then they're there. But and because she is polling highest in some of the most recent polls. You mentioned the Kamala Harris bump that she got. It subsided fairly quickly, right? And so I think that there has to be an attempt for breakout moments. At some point, first of all, there's two things they're trying to do. One is get into the November debate. So far, only 8 of these 12 have qualified for the November debate under the stricter Democratic National Committee rules. And the second thing is to continue their fundraising efforts. And they're very much related, right? Looking viable, having a place on the stage in November is going to directly impact fundraising.
Tulsi Gabbard was there before, then she was gone, now she's back. Any advice for her? Or is she just one of the regulars who needs a breakout moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got to lump her in with some of the folks like Andrew Yang and others that need a breakout moment. Cory Booker, I think, finds himself certainly in that,
and Julian
position.
Castro as well.
Julian Castro.
So let's talk about somebody more interesting potentially, and that's Tom Steyer. Because here's a guy who's been spending millions of dollars to get himself on that stage. He finally made it. Is tonight a make it or break it for, okay, Tom, you bought your way here, now what?
Yeah, and I think the buying your way here is going to be interesting to see if any of the other folks on the stage jab at that, right? In other words, can they, if they're looking to get the populist part of the Democratic Party in the same way that Donald Trump got the populist wing of the Republican Party, is Tom Steyer an easy target, sort of the billionaire businessman who kind of bullied his way into the forum? He's already qualified for November, though, so he's going to be around at least in next month's debate. And so when they decide to make that attack, might be interesting as well. Eroding his support isn't that important because he doesn't have a lot right now.
So it looks like potentially there is another experience here of circular firing squad going on, pointing to each other as they all try to get a break, rather than saying, focus on the target. The target is President Trump.
Probably so, but remember, a couple things are happening. They're trying to distance themselves from the pack. They're also, in some ways, trying out for vice president, right? I mean, for those who aren't going to make it, and all but one of them will not be the nominee, right? And so vice president is one option. The other thing is that this is an opportunity to highlight for the public Democratic values, Democratic policy positions. Republicans aren't going to have any debates, right? I mean, even though there's challengers to President Trump, he's not going to debate them during the nomination season, right? So this is a time for the Democrats to get their message, contrasting with President Trump, out and center, and have the press, like we're doing right now, focus on what they want to talk about.
And of course, with 12 people in 3 hours, have your moment.
My goodness. I mean, in some ways, it's sort of a series of mini press conferences, right?
Yeah.
And so there might be some exchanges depending on what the format looks like. But even with 3 hours, 12 people, that's a lot to process for any of us.
All right. Dean Stephen Maynard Caliando, thanks for being with me. Your
It's
first
great to
time with
see
us, so
you.
you'll
It's
come
great to
back.
see you. I will.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We're going to take one more break. We'll come back.